All right, and welcome back. This is Raul. Hopefully you joined us in the previous demonstrations of the tapped BBD module here, the A188-2. We were talking last time about different mixes, creating different mixes on this module. Had a little bit of a mix-up. I think I had said in the end of the last demo we were going to do a different patch and then also modulation, but I'm kind of switching the order just for practical reasons. So this time around we're going to be doing a little bit of modulation and then we're going to follow it up with a different patch in the next segment. For this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to feed a drum loop into here just so we get a different type of sound going into our BBD module. And if you watch the demo I did on the A127, you might recognize this. And after we hear what a drum loop sounds like going into this module and creating a couple mixes out of it, we'll then kind of go in and maybe do a little bit of modulation as well. So first, let's get the loop going in there. So I have my loop out here in my external player. I'm going to start it up, and then I'm just going to patch it right into my audio in right here. I'm just going to use my basic hi-hat riff is what I called it. So here we go. I'm going to patch that in. So that's my basic riff there. And I think I have some BBD. Let me turn that off. Let's start at basic 0. So there we go. All the way across and just original. Adjust my input level. Okay, so this is our basic original sound. And now let's go in and maybe add a little bit of taps from the BBD delay. So let's add the top one, negative component. And then bring in that BBD signal. Let's try a little bit of 396, negative component. And maybe a little bit of 662 in the positive direction. Maybe a little bit of the 1194. Negative version. There we go. A little bit of positive 1726, negative 2790. So now we have one mix going on up here. And let's create a second mix now. And let's just go nuts. Maybe a little bit too nuts. Now we're not getting any frame of reference here. Try bringing this down a little bit. But this is a good situation to be in. Let's try and figure out how do we get it to a playable place. There we go. It's a little bit better. Let's bring our delay clock up a little bit. Let's bring in some more BBD. You can really hear right there the flanging of the hi-hat. Okay, let's bring it down a little further. It's actually changing the tone of my hi-hat a little bit. Kind of like it. Bring up my input level a little bit. So we have two separate mixes going on here. Let's bring up the feedback a little. Maybe a little more. Let's hear a little bit of original. So all BBD on one mix, all original on the other. Let's bring a little bit more of that in. Let's try a different feedback setting. So back to 0. Swing it back in the negative direction. Okay. Okay, we're getting some interesting sounds going on here. Let's bring our delay clock down. A little lower. And let's keep one affected signal and one original. Right there we can hear the clock noise coming in pretty abrasively. And let's bring the delay clock all the way down. Okay. I'm going to unpatch the original very briefly so we can hear what just the affected signal sounds like. I'm going to bring this one all the way up to the max. Now I'm going to unpatch original. So fairly unrecognizable, almost like a rumble again. And right there, almost like a different kind of processed sound. Let's bring back our original. Back to some distorted type sounds. So all kinds of different areas of the spectrum right there. From very, very subtle to a little more flangy, a little more flangy. Chorusy kind of, to just all out distorted. So you can get a wide variety of sounds coming out of just one loop, as you can see. All right. So I think you got the idea of that. Now let's do a little bit of modulation, everybody's favorite. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually patch out from my sequencer into my envelope, and whoops, actually hit my tripod, and I'm going to have to actually reach around here to turn on my case. So excuse me for a moment. There we go. And so now that I have power coming in, I'm going to take my trigger out from my sequencer and patch it into my envelope generator. Right there. Gate being triggered. I'm going to use that envelope to modulate my BBD delay clock. So let's hear what that sounds like. I'm going to take the output and I'm just going to go straight into CV1. Let's try that. Now I'm actually modulating with an envelope, but I'm modulating at a certain rate determined by my sequencer. So up on my sequencer, I'm going to actually bring the rate down a little bit, and you'll see the light flash slightly slower. And then I can kind of tailor it to what I like. Let me bring the delay clock down a little bit. So this light is coming on every time it receives a trigger at the rate of my sequencer. And I'm just kind of doing it by ear just to see what I kind of like as far as sound goes. And if I want to tweak that modulation or shape it a little bit, I can adjust my attack or decay, sustain or release. And right there I'm just kind of in the low setting. Let's actually, before we change the range of our envelope generator, let's actually try something over here. Alright, getting some fairly interesting sounds going out of here. Let's go a little bit farther in the slow side. Let's go a little lower. And that's kind of at a slow rate coming from my sequencer. I'm going to bring my sequencer up a little bit. So I can get things that are totally out of sync if I want to, but not quite as musical as I had before, so if I bring the rate back down. And right there, it's a very, very slow clock rate. And you can hear the effect happening on the BBD. And that's just in the low setting so far.